Listen, I have been teaching combat doctrine at the Galactic Military Academy for 17 cycles. 17. In that time I have trained Krillians with 4 arms, the Spid Shock troops with reflexes that put most species to shame, and even a Thoraxian who could bench press a shuttle, but never, and I mean never, had I encountered anything quite as stubborn, quite as illogically confident, or quite as terrifyingly effective as the human they assigned to my advanced weapons course. Her name was Kira Vance, and she was about to make me question every single thing I thought I knew about warfare. The morning she walked into my training hall, I was in the middle of my standard lecture. You know the one. Dual-wielding is a myth perpetuated by primitive entertainment media. No species possesses the neural architecture to effectively manage 2 independent weapons simultaneously while maintaining situational awareness, defensive posture, and tactical coherence. I had my 3 primary appendages crossed in what I considered a very authoritative pose. My secondary arms were gesturing at the holographic display showing the biomechanical limitations of various species. The 47 students from 12 different worlds were taking notes, nodding along, completely engaged. Then the door hissed open. She walked in late. Of course she did. Humans seem to have this weird relationship with punctuality. Not late enough to be disrespectful, but just late enough that everyone turns to look. Kira Vance was tall for a human female, maybe 1.8 meters, with dark hair pulled back in what they call a ponytail. She wore the standard issue Academy combat suit, but something about the way she carried herself made it look like she had just stepped out of one of those ridiculous human action films. You know, the ones where physics is apparently optional. Sorry, Instructor Velcris, she said, her voice carrying that particular human accent I later learned was from a place called New Zealand. Shuttle was delayed. I waved one of my secondary appendages dismissively. Take a seat, Cadet Vance. We were discussing the impossibility of dual wielding. She paused, just for a second. Then she smiled. That smile should have been my first warning. Impossible? She asked, still standing in the doorway. Or just, really difficult. Several students made that chittering sound that passes for laughter among the Vespid. A Thoraxian in the back row grumbled something that my translator mercifully did not pick up. I fixed her with what I hoped was a withering stare. My species, the Zethric, have very good withering stares. We have large, multifaceted eyes specifically designed for it. Cadet Vance, please consult the biomechanical data on your tablet. The neural overhead required to independently control 2 weapons while processing combat variables exceeds the capacity of known sentient species by a factor of 3.7. She walked to an empty seat, her boots making soft thuds on the training hall floor. She said, sitting down, but has anyone actually, tried? I felt my crest rising, which is what happens when a Zethric gets irritated. Cadet, the Galactic Military Institute has conducted extensive research over 400 standard cycles. The conclusion is unanimous. Dual-wielding is a statistical improbability that borders on impossibility. Cool, Kira said, nodding slowly. But that is not what I asked. The Vespid started chittering again. A Krillian named Torvik, who had become something of a friend to the human, made a sound that might have been a snort. I decided to move on. Some battles are not worth fighting, especially not on the first day a new cadet joins your class. Today, I announced, turning back to the holographic display, we will be covering optimal weapon selection for your primary appendage combat style. Single weapon mastery is the foundation of effective combat doctrine. The lesson proceeded normally for about 20 minutes. I demonstrated various grip stances and striking patterns with a standard issue plasma blade. The students practiced with training weapons that delivered mild electric shocks instead of, melting through armor plating. Kira participated without complaint. She was actually quite good. Her footwork was solid, her reaction time impressive. For a species with only 2 eyes, humans have surprisingly decent spatial awareness. Then came the practical exercise. Pair up, I instructed. One of you will attack with a training blade. The other will defend and counter. Standard drill Alpha 7. Rotate after 5 exchanges. The students shuffled into pairs. Kira ended up with Torvik, which made sense. They had been in the same shuttle group since arriving at the academy. I walked among the pairs offering corrections, adjusting grips, preventing the occasional enthusiastic Thoraxian from sending their partner through a wall. Standard instructor stuff. Then I heard it. A double impact sound. Thwack thwack. not the single thwack of one training blade connecting two distinct impacts, almost simultaneous. I turned. Kira Vance was holding two training blades, one in each hand, and she was using them to absolutely dismantle Torvik's defense. Cadet Vance. My voice came out sharper than I intended, which made my translator unit crackle. What do you think you are doing? She paused mid-strike. Both blades held in what I had to admit were technically correct defensive positions. Practice with two weapons. Yeah, I noticed that too, she said, and I swear there was laughter in her voice. Weird how I picked them both up and my brain did not explode. Several students had stopped their own drills to watch. This was not good. Humans have this terrible habit of inspiring others to try equally stupid things. Put one down, I said, walking toward her. We train with single weapons for a reason, Cadet. Sure, Kira said. But what is the reason exactly? Like the actual reason, not the "this is how we have always done it" reason. I felt my crest rising again. This human had been in my class for less than an hour and she was already questioning centuries of military doctrine. The reason, Cadet Vance, is neural bandwidth. Your species, like all species, has limitations. Your brain cannot effectively process the independent motor control, spatial awareness, and tactical decision-making required to use two weapons effectively. She looked at the blades in her hands, then she looked at me. But I just did. 5 seconds of flailing does not constitute effective combat. Want to test that? The training hall went dead silent. You could have heard a Vespid wing beat. Excuse me, I said slowly. Kira Vance stood there, two training blades held loosely in her hands, that same small smile on her face. I am saying, Instructor Velkris, that I would like to formally challenge your assertion that dual wielding is impossible. Let me spar against you. If I lose, I will shut up about it forever. If I win, well, she shrugged. Maybe we consider updating the curriculum. 46 alien students and one very confused Zedric instructor stared at the human who had just challenged a decorated combat veteran with 17 cycles of teaching experience to a duel. Part of me wanted to refuse. It would have been the smart thing, the professional thing. But another part of me, the part that had spent years watching cocky cadets learn hard lessons about hubris, thought maybe this would be educational, for her, obviously. Very well, I said, picking up my own training blade. Just one, because I am not an idiot. Standard sparring rules. First to 3 confirmed hits, wins. Torvik judged the match. The Krillian nodded, his chitinous plates clicking together nervously. The other students formed a loose circle around us. I could see excitement on their faces. Well, on the faces of species that have faces. The Thoraxians just sort of vibrated with anticipation. Kira rolled her shoulders, adjusted her grip on both blades, and settled into a stance that looked wrong. Not wrong like untrained wrong. Wrong like every manual I had ever read said it should be impossible wrong. Her weight was distributed evenly, both weapons held at different angles, her eyes tracking my position with unsettling focus. Ready? Torvik asked. Ready? I confirmed. Sure, Kira said. Begin. I moved first, naturally. Experience and training kicked in. A simple probe, mid-level / designed to test her reaction time. She would block with one blade, leaving her open for my follow-up, except she blocked with both blades, one high, one low, forming an X pattern that caught my strike between them. Before I could process what had happened, she twisted, using the leverage to redirect my blade while simultaneously striking with her other weapon toward my midsection. I jumped back. The training blade missed by centimeters. Point 1 to Cadet Vance, Torvik announced, sounding surprised. What the hell just happened? I reset. More cautious now. That had been luck. Had to be. I feinted left, struck right, a combination that had been putting cadets on their backs for a decade. Kira's left blade parried my strike. Her right blade came in at an angle I had not even considered possible, tagging my shoulder joint before I could retreat. Point 2 to Cadet Vance. Okay. Now I was paying attention. I started moving, using footwork to maintain distance, looking for an opening. Kira tracked me, both weapons moving in small, controlled circles. They were not mirroring each other. They were doing completely different things. And somehow her brain was managing both. I launched a full assault, 3 strikes in rapid succession, using my superior reach and strength. Any normal cadet would have been overwhelmed. Kira deflected 2 strikes with her left blade while simultaneously striking with her right. I had to abort my attack to avoid getting hit. She pressed forward, and suddenly I was the one on the defensive. This was not possible. The biomechanics alone should have made this impossible. But here was this human, this ridiculously confident human, using two weapons like she had been born with them in her hands. Her attacks came from multiple angles simultaneously. Her defense-covered vectors I had not even known were vulnerable. It's like fighting two opponents who shared perfect coordination. I tried everything. Speed attacks, power strikes, feints, combinations. Nothing worked. She was reading my moves before I made them, adapting faster than should have been possible, and those two blades were everywhere at once. Finally, inevitably, her left blade tapped my chest plate, right over where a Zethric heart equivalent would be. Point 3 to Cadet Vance, Torvik said quietly. Match concluded. I stood there, breathing hard, staring at this human who had just beaten me in less than 2 minutes using a fighting style that was supposed to be impossible. The training hall was silent. Then someone started clapping. Slowly at first, then others joined in. Within seconds, the entire class was applauding, making various species-appropriate sounds of approval. Kira lowered her weapons and had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. So, about that curriculum update? I should have been angry, humiliated. Instead, I found myself laughing. It came out as a sort of clicking whistle, which startled some of the students who had never heard a Zethric laugh before. Cadet Vance, I said once I had recovered my composure, I believe we need to have a conversation with the Dean of Combat Studies. Am I in trouble? She asked. Trouble? No. I looked at the two training blades she still held. But you are about to become a very interesting research subject, and possibly rewrite 400 cycles of military doctrine. Cool, she said. Do I still have to write that essay on traditional single-weapon combat philosophy? Double the length, I told her. Due tomorrow, she groaned, which made several students laugh. But as I watched her return the training blades to the equipment rack, moving with that peculiar human confidence, I realized something. The Galactic Military Academy had been teaching the same doctrines, the same limitations, the same assumptions for centuries. We had taken our own biological constraints and declared them universal laws, and then humanity showed up. Typical. Over the next few days, words spread fast. By fast, I mean the entire academy knew about the human who could dual-wield by dinner time. By the next morning, 3 different research departments had submitted requests to study Kira. By the afternoon, the Dean of Combat Studies had personally visited my training hall. Dean Thoris was a Vespid, old enough that his wing casings had taken on a dull bronze color. He watched from the observation deck as I put Kira through increasingly complex drills, both blades moving in patterns that should have required at least 3 separate brains to coordinate. Explain this, he demanded, his wings buzzing in agitation. I cannot, I admitted. By every metric we have, what she is doing should be impossible. Yet she does it anyway. Apparently, no one told humans about the limitations. Thoris made a clicking sound of frustration. Have you analyzed her neural patterns? The medical department ran full scans yesterday. Her brain activity during dual-weapon combat is, and I quote, highly unusual but stable. Whatever she is doing, it is not damaging her cognitive function. But how? I watched as Kira executed a spinning strike that incorporated both weapons in a devastating combination attack. I have a theory. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. Yes, they track prey over long distances, maintaining multiple streams of information simultaneously: position of prey, terrain analysis, weather conditions, group coordination. What if their brains are simply wired for parallel processing in ways we never considered? That is speculative at best, Thoris said. Everything about humans is speculative at best. I pointed out, they are adaptable in ways that make no evolutionary sense. They form emotional bonds with anything that moves. They have cultural taboos against eating certain animals but keep those same animals as companions. They launched themselves into space, using controlled explosions while still fighting wars with each other. Nothing about humans makes sense until you accept that making sense is optional for them. Thoris's wings buzzed again, but this time with what might have been amusement. You like her. She is a good student when she is not being deliberately difficult, I said. And she just proved that our fundamental understanding of combat doctrine might be incomplete. The Council is not going to like this. The Council has not fought her. Below us, Kira finished her drill sequence and looked up at the observation deck. She waved. Actually waved, like we were friends meeting for lunch instead of military instructors analyzing her like a biological anomaly. "What do you recommend?" Boris asked. I thought about it. About all those centuries of doctrine, all those carefully researched limitations, all those absolute certainties that had just been shattered by one stubborn human with two swords and a complete disregard for conventional wisdom. "Let her continue," I said. "Document everything. If she can do this, maybe other humans can. And if humans can, perhaps we have been limiting other species unnecessarily. Maybe the Krillians with their 4 arms could manage 3 weapons. Maybe the Thoraxians with their distributed nervous systems could coordinate entirely new combat styles. You are suggesting we rebuild our entire combat training program based on one exceptional cadet. I am suggesting we stop assuming our limitations are universal," I corrected. "Is that not what the Academy is supposed to be about? Learning, adapting, improving?" Boris was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Proceed with your analysis. McVelkris, keep her alive. The last thing we need is humanity's first dual-wielding combat specialist dying in a training accident." "Noted," I said dryly. "I will try not to let her fight anything too dangerous. Like other humans." That got an actual laugh from the dean. After he left, I went back down to the training floor. Kira was sitting against the wall, drinking water from one of those ridiculous human bottles they all seem to carry everywhere. "So," she said as I approached, "am I expelled or famous?" "Neither. Both. It is complicated." I settled into a resting position next to her, my primary legs folding beneath me. "Tell me something, Cadet Vance. How did you learn to do this?" "Earth military training?" She laughed. "God, no. Earth military specifically trained us to use one weapon at a time. Very traditional, very by the book." "Then where?" "Video games. Mostly." I felt my crest rise in confusion. "Video game? Yeah, recreational simulation software. I spent way too much time playing combat sims as a kid. Dual wielding was always an option in those. I just kind of figured it was normal. You learn to fight with 2 weapons from entertainment software." "When you say it like that, it sounds dumb." "Cadet Vance, everything about this situation sounds dumb. Yet here we are, with you rewriting military doctrine because you played too many games." She grinned. "Pretty much." "Yeah." I shook my head, which is a gesture humans and Zethric apparently share. "Your species is ridiculous. We have been told," Kira said. "But hey, ridiculous seems to be working out okay so far. We made it to the stars. We joined the galactic community. We did not immediately blow ourselves up. That has got to count for something. It counts for giving instructors like me headaches. Sorry about that." "No, you are not." "No," she agreed cheerfully. "I am really not." I looked at this strange, impossible human who had walked into my carefully ordered training hall and turned everything upside down in less than a week. "What happens next?" I asked, more to myself than to her. But Kira answered anyway. "Next I keep training. Keep getting better. Keep proving that impossible is just a word people use when they have not tried hard enough." She stood up, offering me one of her hands in that peculiar human gesture of assistance. I took it, letting her help pull me up. For a species without enhanced strength, humans had surprisingly strong grips. "Besides," she added, "I heard there is an Academy combat tournament next month. I am thinking about entering with 2 weapons. Obviously, the tournament rules do not technically allow dual wielding. They do not technically disallow it either," Kira pointed out. I checked. "Of course she did. You are going to cause so much chaos," I told her. "Probably," she agreed. "But at least it will be entertaining chaos." And that, I realized, was humanity in a nutshell. Entertaining chaos wrapped in stubbornness, topped with an absolute refusal to accept what everyone else considered impossible. The tournament was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks for Kira to prepare, for word to spread even further, for the inevitable political complications to arise when the Galactic Military Academy's human cadet decides to publicly demonstrate that centuries of accepted doctrine might be wrong. I should have stopped her, should have put my foot down or appendage down, or whatever the appropriate metaphor was, but I did not, because deep down, beneath my professional concerns and my adherence to protocol, I wanted to see what would happen when Kira Vance stepped into that tournament arena with 2 swords and showed the entire galactic community what one stubborn human heck could do. Sometimes impossible is just a word. Sometimes define count means prove it. And sometimes, just sometimes, the best thing an instructor can do is get out of the way and let their student rewrite history. Even if that student learned everything they know from video games, especially if that student learned everything they know from video games. This was going to be interesting. The 3 weeks before the tournament passed in a blur of activity, controversy, and what I can only describe as bureaucratic panic. First, the Galactic Combat Sports Commission tried to ban Kira from competing. Their official statement cited Regulation 47-B, which apparently said something about standard equipment loadouts. The problem was, standard equipment loadouts did not specifically mention how many weapons you could carry. It just said appropriate melee armaments. Kira, being Kira, filed a formal appeal that was basically 3 pages of legal jargon that boiled down to show me where it says I cannot. They could not. So she was in. Second, the betting pools went absolutely insane. Apparently, there is a thriving underground gambling network among academy students, and the odds on Kira were fluctuating wildly. Some people thought she would revolutionize combat sports. Others thought she would get demolished in the first round by someone with actual training. I may have put down a small wager myself. For research purposes, obviously. Third, Kira became something of a celebrity. Everywhere she went on campus, students stopped to watch her. Some asked for demonstrations, others challenged her to impromptu sparring matches, which she usually won. A few called her a fraud, convinced that her victory over me had been a fluke. Those people learned otherwise pretty quickly. But the real chaos started when humans back on Earth got wind of what was happening. Instructor Velcris, Kira said one morning, walking into the training hall with her personal communication device in hand, "I think we have a problem." I was in the middle of reviewing tournament brackets. What kind of problem? The kind where Earth Global News Network wants to send a film crew to cover the tournament and also maybe interview me and possibly do a whole documentary series about humans in the Galactic Military Academy. I dropped my datapad. "You are joking." "I wish," she said, showing me her screen. Sure enough, there were 17 messages from various human media outlets, all desperately trying to get access to what they were calling the dual-wielding sensation who is breaking alien combat records. "This is bad," I said. "Why is it bad?" "Because, Cadet Vance, you have not actually broken any records yet. You beat one instructor in a practice match. The tournament has not even started. What happens if you lose in the first round?" She looked offended. "I am not going to lose in the first round. Confidence is good. Overconfidence gets you killed. Or in this case, humiliated on galactic television." "You really think I am going to lose?" I considered lying. Then I remembered that humans have very good instincts for detecting deception. "No," I admitted. "I think you are going to win, which is almost worse because then everyone will want to know how you did it, and we will have every species in the galaxy trying to figure out if they can do it too, and the entire military training establishment will be in upheaval." "Sounds exciting," Kira said cheerfully. "Sounds like a massive headache." "Well, lucky for you, it is my headache, not yours. Cadet, you are my student. Your headaches are absolutely my headaches. That is how teaching works." She grinned. "Ah, you do care." "I care about not having to explain to the Academy Board why my student caused an intergalactic incident with a sporting event. Then I guess I better win spectacularly enough that nobody can complain." That was exactly what I was afraid of. The tournament was held in the Academy's main arena, a massive structure that could hold 5,000 spectators from various atmospheric and gravitational requirements. It was normally used for graduation ceremonies and the occasional visiting dignitary's speech. Today it was packed. I had never seen this many beings in one place. Humans, naturally, made up a significant portion of the crowd. They had apparently decided this was a cultural moment worth witnessing in person, but there were also Vespid, Krillians, Thoraxians, Zethric, and at least 40 other species I recognized, plus a few I did not. The human media had been granted access, which meant there were cameras everywhere. Real cameras, not just the standard recording drones the Academy used. Humans loved their dramatic angles and close-up shots. I found my seat in the instructors section, next to Torvik, who had become something of an unofficial liaison between Kira and the rest of her class. "Big day," the Krellian said. his translator making his voice sound unusually nervous. Indeed. Do you think she can actually win this? I watched as the tournament officials conducted their pre-event checks. Honestly, Torvik, I have stopped trying to predict what humans can or cannot do. Every time I think I understand their limitations, one of them does something that makes me reconsider my entire education. That is not very reassuring. Welcome to teaching humans. The tournament format was straightforward. 64 competitors. Single elimination. 3 rounds per day over 3 days. Competitors could use any standard melee weapon from the approved equipment list. Matches ended with first blood, submission or knockout. Kira's first opponent was a Thoraxian named Greth. Big, heavily armored, with the kind of reach that made most opponents think twice about engaging. He was ranked 7th in last year's tournament and was generally considered a solid competitor. He walked into the arena carrying a massive warhammer that probably weighed more than Kira did. Kira walked in carrying 2 short swords, standard academy issue, edges gleaming under the arena lights. The crowd went quiet. Competitors, ready, the referee announced, a neutral species arbiter who looked profoundly uncomfortable with the attention this match was getting. Grith settled into a defensive stance, hammer held ready. Kira rolled her shoulders, bounced on her toes twice and smiled. Begin, Grith charged. Because of course he did. Thoraxians always charge. It is like some kind of species-wide tactical doctrine that involves making yourself a larger target and hoping you hit something before it hits you. Kira sidestepped. Smoothly, efficiently, not wasting a single motion. Gretha's hammer smashed into the arena floor where she had been standing, sending up a small shower of sparks. Before he could recover, she was inside his reach. Both swords moved in a blur. One struck his left knee joint, the other tagged his shoulder plating. Neither blow would have been lethal in real combat, but they were both confirmed hits by the sensor system. The referee's voice cut through the arena. 2 points to Vance. Match concluded. Total time 6 seconds. The crowd erupted. Greth stood there, looking down at his hammer, then at Kira, then back at his hammer, as if trying to figure out what had just happened. Good match, Kira said, offering him a hand. He stared at it for a moment, then laughed. That deep, rumbling Thoraxian laugh that sounds like rocks falling down a mountain. You are fast, human. Thanks. You are very strong. If that hammer had connected, I would have been paced. Next time it will connect. Looking forward to it. They shook hands, which looked ridiculous given that Greth's hand was roughly 3 times the size of Kira's. Then he lumbered out of the arena, still chuckling to himself. I turned to Torvik. Well, that was anticlimactic. For you, maybe, the Krillian said. I just won 200 credits in the betting pool. You bet on your friend? Obviously. I have been training with her for weeks. I know what she can do. Fair point. Kira had 3 more matches that day. She won all of them. None lasted longer than 20 seconds. By the end of day 1, the entire academy was talking about her. The human media were ecstatic, running constant coverage with titles like Human Cadet Dominates Alien Tournament and 2 Swords Better Than One Says Earth's Latest Hero. Social media, whatever that meant, was apparently exploding with discussions about whether this proved humans were naturally superior warriors or if Kira was just exceptionally skilled. The answer, I suspected, was neither and both. Humans were not naturally superior, but they were naturally stubborn, adaptable and completely willing to try things that other species had decided were impossible, which, in its own way, was a kind of superiority. Day 2 brought tougher opponents. The early rounds had been eliminating the weaker competitors. Now Kira was facing cadets who had real skill, real training, and real determination not to be embarrassed by a human with unconventional tactics. Her first match was against a Vespid named Kelix, who specialized in speed-based combat. Vespids are fast, like unnervingly fast. Their reaction times are roughly 3 times better than human baseline. Kelix entered the arena carrying dual short spears, which was interesting. Apparently Kira had inspired at least one other competitor to try multiple weapons. This should be good, Torvik muttered next to me. The match started. Kelix blurred into motion, spears lashing out in a pattern that would have overwhelmed most defenders. But Kira was not most defenders. She parried with one sword, struck with the other, her movements economical and precise. The 2 of them moved across the arena in a dance of blades and spears, neither giving ground. Then Kira did something unexpected. She threw one of her swords. It spun through the air, not aimed at Kelix, but at the ground right in front of him. The Vespid's reflexes kicked in automatically, eyes tracking the thrown weapon. That split-second distraction was all Kira needed. She closed the distance, her remaining sword moving in a tight arc that caught Kellex across his wing casing. Point scored. Match over. The crowd was silent for a moment, processing what they had just seen. Then the applause started, mixed with that chittering sound Vespids make when they are impressed. Kellex retrieved Kira's thrown sword and handed it back to her. "Clever," he said. "Thanks, you are really fast." "Not fast enough, apparently. Today, anyway. Rematch sometime." "Absolutely." I realized something watching that exchange. Kira was not just winning matches, she was winning respect. Her opponents were not angry or humiliated by their losses. They were intrigued, impressed, eager to learn from her. That, more than her combat skills, was what made her dangerous. She was changing how people thought about fighting. The rest of Day 2 went similarly. Kira advanced through her bracket, each match showcasing different aspects of her dual-wielding style. Sometimes she used both weapons defensively, creating an impenetrable barrier. Sometimes she split her offense, attacking from two angles simultaneously. Sometimes she sacrificed one weapon as a distraction to land a hit with the other. Every match was different. Every victory was decisive. By the end of the day, she had made it to the final 8. The finals were scheduled for Day 3, and the entire academy was buzzing with anticipation. Kira's potential opponents included some of the most skilled fighters in the tournament, but the one everyone was talking about was Malrix Thorn. Thorn was a Krillian, four-armed and absolutely massive. He had won the tournament for the past 2 years running. His fighting style was brutally efficient, overwhelming opponents with sheer power and reach. He used a single long blade, wielded with all four arms for devastating strikes that few could defend against. And he had made no secret of the fact that he thought Kira's dual-wielding was a gimmick. "She will learn," he told reporters after his semi-final match. "There is a reason traditional combat doctrine exists. It works. Flashy tricks might win early rounds, but when you face real skill, real power, they fail." The media ate it up. Human versus Krillian. Innovation versus tradition. The unstoppable force versus the immovable object. Except both were actually pretty movable. And honestly, the metaphor kind of broke down under scrutiny, but it made for good television. Kira's semi-final match was against a Zethric named Salix, who was actually one of my former students. She was good, really good, with a defensive style that had carried her this far through patience and precision. The match lasted almost a full minute, which was an eternity by this tournament's standards. Salix refused to give Kira any openings. Her blade work textbook perfect, but eventually perfect was not enough. Kira feinted high with one sword, went low with the other, and scored the winning point. "Your student is terrifying," Salix told me afterward, nursing her bruised pride. "I know," I said, "but she is our terrifying student. That is supposed to be comforting." "A little bit." "It is not." Malrix Thorn won his semi-final even faster than Kira had won hers. His opponent, a skilled Vespid fighter, lasted approximately 12 seconds before Thorn's massive blade caught him with a strike that sent him sliding across the arena floor. The finals were set. Kira Vance versus Malrix Thorn. Human versus Krillian. 2 swords versus 1 massive blade. Innovation versus tradition. The arena was somehow even more packed than before. I was pretty sure we were violating several fire codes, but nobody seemed to care. The human media had set up what looked like a small city of recording equipment. I counted at least 30 different cameras, plus numerous drones hovering around the arena perimeter. Kira walked out to a roar of approval from the crowd. She waved, looking surprisingly relaxed for someone about to face the tournament's defending champion. Thorn entered from the opposite side, his forearms flexing in sequence, his blade held ready. He looked confident. Why would not he? He had every reason to believe his power and skill would overwhelm this upstart human. The referee called them to the center of the arena. "Competitors, this is the final match. Standard rules apply. First to 3 confirmed points or submission wins." "Understood." "Understood." Thorn's crystal clear, Kira replied. They returned to their starting positions. The arena fell silent. "Begin." Thorn did not charge this time. He was smarter than that. He advanced carefully, blade held in a defensive position, using his 4 arms to create angles that would be difficult to penetrate. Kira circled, looking for an opening. They met in the center of the arena, and for the first time in the tournament, Kira's opponent matched her completely. Thorne's four-armed grip gave him leverage and control that negated her dual weapon advantage. Every strike she made was parried or deflected. Every opening she created was immediately closed. They separated, reset, engaged again. The crowd was absolutely silent now, everyone watching this clash of styles. Kira tried splitting her attack, going high and low simultaneously. Thorne's superior reach let him defend both angles. She tried speed, launching a flurry of strikes. Thorne's forearms kept pace. For the first time in the tournament, Kira looked challenged. No, scratch that, she looked excited. That dangerous smile appeared on her face. "Okay," she said, loudly enough for the arena pickups to catch it. "Now we are having fun." She changed tactics. Instead of trying to penetrate Thorne's defense, she started moving, constantly, unpredictably, forcing him to rotate to track her. Cranians are strong and skilled, but they are not particularly fast at turning. That distributed nervous system of theirs has some lag time when coordinating movement across their large bodies. Kira exploited it mercilessly. She darted in, struck, retreated before Thorne could counter. Again and again, testing different angles, different timings. Thorne was good enough to defend them all, but I could see frustration starting to build. He was being forced to react instead of dictate the fight's pace. Then Kira made her move. She threw both swords. Not at Thorne, at the ground on either side of him, where they stuck upright in the arena surface. The crowd gasped. Thorne froze, confused. What was this human doing? Kira charged in, empty-handed. Thorne, recovering from his surprise, swung his massive blade. It was a strike that would have ended the match if it connected. Kira went under it. Not around, not over. Under, sliding on her knees like she was stealing a base in that ridiculous sport humans play with sticks and balls. She passed between Thorne's legs, grabbed both stuck swords as she passed, and came up behind him. Before he could turn, both swords tapped his back plating. "Point scored, 1 point to Vance," the referee announced, sounding as shocked as everyone else felt. The crowd went berserk. Thorne spun around, all four eyes wide with surprise. "That was impossible." "I get that a lot," Kira said, grinning. They reset. Thorne was angry now. Not rage angry, but competitive angry, the kind of anger that makes you fight smarter, sharper. His next attack was faster, more aggressive, using all four arms to create a wall of steel that Kira could not penetrate. She did not try to penetrate it. She redirected it. One sword caught his blade and guided it past her. The other sword came in from an angle Thorne was not defending. Point scored, 2 points to Vance. The crowd was chanting now. I could not make out the words through my translator, but the rhythm was unmistakable. They were chanting Kira's name. Thorne stood still for a moment, breathing hard, reassessing. This human had just scored 2 points on him. 2 points. Nobody scored 2 points on Malaric's Thorne. When they engaged for the third time, it was different. Thorne was not fighting to win anymore. He was fighting to learn. I could see it in the way he moved, testing Kira's reactions, probing her defenses, trying to understand this style that should not exist. But Kira was not a teaching demonstration. She was a competitor in a final match. She pressed her advantage. Her two swords working in perfect coordination, creating combinations that Thorne's single weapon, even wielded with 4 arms, could not counter effectively. She was faster, more adaptable, and completely unpredictable. The final point came almost anticlimactically. Kira feinted with her left sword, drawing Thorne's defense, then struck with her right, tagging his shoulder joint so lightly it barely registered on the sensors. But it registered. 3 points to Vance. Match concluded. Winner, Cadet Kira Vance. The arena exploded. I mean that almost literally. The noise was deafening. Every species in attendance was making their version of cheering sounds, creating a cacophony that would have been terrifying if it was not so clearly celebratory. Kira lowered her swords, breathing hard, sweat dripping down her face. She looked exhausted. She looked exhilarated. She looked like someone who had just proven that impossible was negotiable. Thorne stood there for a long moment, then did something I did not expect. He walked over to Kira and bowed. Actually bowed. All 4 arms spread in the Krillian gesture of deep respect. "You are extraordinary," he said. "I would be honored to train with you." Kira, still catching her breath, returned the bow as best she could with human anatomy. "I would love that. You almost had me twice." "Almost is not enough." Today, anyway. Rematch sometime? Absolutely. They shook hands, or rather Thorne shook her hand with one of his four while the other three gestured approval. The referee called them to the center of the arena for the awards ceremony. Kira was presented with the championship trophy, a fairly gaudy thing that looked like someone had melted down several weapons and reshaped them into abstract art. She held it up and the crowd roared again. Later, after the ceremony, after the media interviews, after the celebration and chaos had died down, I found Kira sitting alone in the training hall. She was cleaning her swords with methodical care, the trophy sitting on the bench beside her. "You know," I said, settling next to her, "you just made history today." "I just won a tournament." "You did more than that. You proved that everything we thought we knew about combat limitations might be wrong. You opened a door that will not close." She smiled. "Good. Doors are meant to be opened. Not all of them, maybe. But how do you know which ones unless you try?" I could not argue with that logic. "What happens now? The media will not leave you alone. Other humans will try to replicate what you did. The military training establishment will either embrace this or fight it tooth and nail. Then I guess I keep doing what I have been doing. Training, improving, showing people what is possible." She looked at me, with help from a really good instructor who took a chance on a weird human who would not follow the rules. "You left me little choice. You could have shut me down, made me fight with one weapon, stuck to the doctrine." "I could have," I admitted, "but that would have been the easy choice. And teaching you has taught me something important." "What is that?" "That sometimes the best thing an instructor can do is recognize when a student is onto something, even if it contradicts everything you think you know." You were right, Kira. Nobody had actually tried. We had just assumed for centuries that our limitations were universal. You proved otherwise. She finished cleaning her second sword and slid both into their sheaths. "So, about next semester. I was thinking of trying 3 weapons. Maybe add a dagger." I felt my crest rise. "You are joking." "Maybe," she said, that dangerous smile returning. "Want to find out? You are going to give me so many headaches." "Probably. But at least they will be interesting headaches." I looked at this impossible human who had turned my orderly teaching career upside down, who had rewritten military doctrine with 2 swords and stubborn determination, who had just won a tournament using a fighting style that every expert said could not work. "Yes," I said, "they will definitely be interesting," because that was humanity in a nutshell. They showed up, ignored what everyone said was impossible, and then redefined possible for everyone else. They looked at limitations and said define cannot. They picked up 2 swords when instructors said it could not be done, and then proved them wrong so decisively that the only response was to update the textbooks. And somehow, impossibly, they made it look easy. Typical humans. The tournament had ended. Kira Vance had won. The galaxy had watched. And nothing would ever be quite the same again. Because somewhere out there, another human was watching what Kira had done and thinking, if she can dual-wield, what else can we do? That thought, multiplied across billions of humans, spreading through their culture, inspiring their next generation of fighters and thinkers and stubborn, impossible problem solvers. That was the truly terrifying part. One human with 2 swords had rewritten the rules. Imagine what an entire species of them could do. I looked forward to finding out, even if it meant a lot more headaches.